Eternity's Shadow by E. Thomas Canton. Copyright 2024 E. Thomas Canton. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopy, recording, or by any information storage and retrieval system, without written consent from the publisher. Credits. Voices by MURF.com. Sound effects from www.freesoundslibrary.com. And additional sound effects from www.zapsplat.com and pixabay.com. Music by www.zapsplat.com and IB Audio. Ambition and obsession in the name of God condemns a man's soul. Maximilian Nilsson. History of the Fall of Elsincourt. The tiny ceiling lights emanated a surprising amount of heat, but little actual light, as the otherwise dark chamber attested to. Illumination had never been the issue. By changing from heat to cold, an inquisitor could break a prisoner's will by causing eye or respiratory infections. I breathed through my mouth to avoid the persistent odor of defecate and vomit. I turned from the lights and looked down to see wires running from the old box springs I leaned against to a car battery. Small wonder the inquisitors always got a confession. The church had always denied that the Office of Admissions existed, yet stories had still emerged, like contraband, of the bloody tortures and sadistic practices that happened there. Enough. Please. How much more can I take? I said out loud. I don't understand what you want me to say. Fen sat unresponsive. She now wore the hospital-like gown of an inmate, while her own clothes sat folded under a metal cart. This allowed the inquisitor to search her belongings to find more personal ways of manipulation. Thrown on the top of the cart were the most horrifying medical instruments I could imagine. They were rusty and covered in dried blood. Cleanliness and sterility didn't concern the inquisitors any more than the smell of the place. My hands shook at the thought of what they might do to Fen, while she sat still as death. I mean, I've already promised to get you out of here, I said, as I stood up and circled around her chair. What more do you want? Tell me. If I had loosened her restraints, would she have thanked me with an answer? Fen, I'm sorry about Brooke. I am, I said. But they'll do the same to you if they don't get what they want. She made incoherent utterances. Well, I guess that's a start. At least she's making noises. Out of the blackness, and into the pool of light, stepped the inquisitor, his face hidden in shadow beneath a dark scarlet hood. Without a word, he raised his hand, and the long, blood-red robe draped down from his arm. Presumably, he pointed me toward the unseen exit. My last chance to save Fen from the horrors to be inflicted on her had come and gone. If only she would speak to me. I turned back to her, hoping that the seriousness of this situation had sunk in. Fen, tell me now. My influence over your case is about to end, and it will not end well for you. Silence. The inquisitor, once again, pointed to the door. I had no choice. A deputy minister has little power over such matters. I now had to go back to the archbishop and tell him I'd failed. The situation now sat in the hands of the inquisitors. I walked along the halls. The pathetic cries of broken men and women echoed through the corridors. People like Fen, tortured beyond endurance by people who call themselves holy. Fen didn't, in the slightest, deserve what lay ahead of her. I stopped mid-step as I entered the men's room. Earlier today, I had seen a door to a parallel universe. That should have been impossible, but this should have been too. In front of me now lay a scene that should have also been impossible, but there she stood. I looked out into the hallway. No one approached. Locking the washroom door, I stepped toward the impossible. She wore the uniform of a doctor and tried to stick her head through a small air vent. I could not help but watch, amused, for a moment before speaking. You know, despite what you see in the movies, they aren't big enough for people to crawl through. I said, announcing my presence. Brooke turned toward me without ever giving a clue whether she appreciated the fact that I had spoken or not. Her sick, pale skin made her look as if she had suffered a lifelong illness. Large black bags drooped under her eyes, and she seemed to move more out of instinct than conscious thought as she climbed down from the back of the urinal. Pulling at a hand dryer, Brooke either didn't have the strength or the will to remove it from the wall. I assumed she didn't have the strength because of what they'd put her through here, but her will seemed intact. She pulled at the lid of a toilet tank, but still too weak, it dropped on the floor, cracked and broke. Why are you grabbing at things?
I need to get out of here. I'm getting Fen and going to another world.
She answered in a raspy smoker's voice. Unless you plan on flushing yourself to another Earth, I don't see how the lid of a toilet is going to help you, I said, while planning to do everything necessary to escape with her. Still, how would escape be possible when the sphere of screens and the CCP no longer existed? If they ever did. As I thought, Brooke spotted her prey and had me hand her the toilet plunger that stood on the broken tiles behind me. Startled by the sudden request, I obliged. She took the plunger from me and tried to brain me with it. I couldn't help but wonder why women wanted to hit me that night. After what happened earlier in the evening, I'd recognized the look on Brooke's face. Anticipating her move, I grabbed her slow-moving, fragile arm. Brooke looked at my hand, clutching her arm before raising her eyes to meet mine. Not twice in one night, I said.
What?
I live with 2 nuns. She didn't understand, but I didn't know what else I needed to say. She had clearly never lived with 2 nuns. I released her arm, removing the plunger from her grasp. I'll help you escape from here if you help me escape from this world. Her lips quivered.
Where's Fen?
There's nothing I can do to help her anymore, I said. I didn't dare tell her that Fen was being tortured at that moment. Her grip on reality seemed to be delicate. Once I got Brooke out, I would use whatever favors I could call in to get Fen released. That also meant I needed to get around the Archbishop, but I could figure all that out later. For now, Brooke needed my help. Now the question is, do you want out of here or not?
Why does she need help?
Brooke asked, her voice trembling. Fen never had the proper key. She couldn't enter the Nexus, I said. And the Archbishop wasn't happy. That information confused her even more. I felt terrible for Brooke. The last time I had seen her, I remembered her being brilliant, funny, and full of energy, but now she struggled to understand my words. What did they do to her? How much longer before they realize you're missing? The alarm sounded.
About now.
Thanks. I unlocked the washroom door, opened it a sliver to look around. What the? Upon hearing the deafening din, Brooke peered into the corridor. What we saw looked nothing like a manhunt. People pushed and shoved, knocking each other down as they ran outside in a panic. We watched the chaos, not understanding the cause. Before I could take it all in, Brooke launched herself into the surging tide of people. I ran after her. She remained my only chance to escape this world. The human tide swept us along until we were outside. Brooke turned and looked behind us as we stormed past the gendarmes' barricades. They had cordoned off the entire Office of Admissions. Whatever occurred must have been far bigger than Brooke. She stopped, dragging me to a standstill. I turned. The prison sank into what looked like a dark cloud or a black fog. I'd seen nothing like it before. It seemed to move toward us from behind the prison. I stared at it, finding it difficult to define its borders in the night's darkness. I'd no manner of knowing its enormity or how fast it moved, but we could not see beyond it. Brooke stood in confusion for a moment before picking up a stone and throwing it into the cloud. We waited for it to hit the ground, a building or anything, but it disappeared into the nothing without a sound. Brooke recalibrated her thoughts to conjure up any logical explanation for what she saw.
It's the end of the world,
she said.
So, how do we stop it?
She either asked herself or perhaps desperation drove her to look to me for suggestions. Either way, I didn't hold out much hope. The gendarmes opened the barricades to allow a stretched limousine inside. Would this be some privileged jackass looking to say that he had been there when it happened? Or, perhaps, some misguided would-be savior. The driver exited the car and opened the rear passenger door, allowing the Archbishop to step out. Neither jackass nor savior, but under the circumstances, useless just the same. The ranking gendarme reported to him.
Who are you?
The familiar voice sliced through the cool night air like a dagger. We turned to see a solitary spectre in the darkness, a silhouetted figure slithering through the terrified crowd toward us. Her outline was unmistakable. As she stepped into the white glare of the street lamp, any thoughts we had about the darkness had vanished. Brooke! A second Brooke, now stood a mere meter away. We stared, unable to comprehend the origins or motivations of this mysterious new incarnation of Brooke. Her dress gave her the look of her being an orphan, from an unwritten Dickens novel, but otherwise she and Brooke were identical. While they examined one another, I turned to monitor the Archbishop, who by now had spotted us in the crowd. The gendarmes rode on his heels as he marched in our direction. Brooke tried to make sense out of the chaos as her counterpart tried to make sense out of her. In fact, it occurred to me that the second Brooke couldn't have cared less about the darkness. She only concerned herself with Brooke. Brooke couldn't wrap her head around events fast enough to make sense of them.
Me from another universe.
Said Brooke.
Must be.
Said the other. A startling reminder of the darkness screamed out of the prison. Her voice. Her scream. Brooke froze.
Fen.
I heard her whimper. It must have been the first time she'd realized that Fen had been in the prison. Precious time ticked away while Brooke stared ahead at the Office of Admissions in utter defeat. With all that Brooke had been through that day, I'd not seen her so beaten before. Any fight she had left in her exhaled from her body like a breath of air. Brooke lifted her head and glared at me, letting the accusation hang thick in the air before looking right past me to the Office of Admissions. I turned to see it vanishing into the darkness. Screams exploded from all sides as the crowd ran for imaginary safety. They ran in every direction, with the stronger knocking the slower to the ground, while the mob trampled them without mercy. No horror I could ever imagine could compare with the sheer depravity of the Office of Admissions. Brooke turned to her double, who remained calm, regarding us with a satisfied smile.
Brooke.
The Archbishop approached us.
You did this to me.
Brooke accused him as she pointed to the crescent scar on her forehead. What? What does she mean?
I had to protect the world from what you knew.
He began.
Trust me, you came out a better person for it.
What did you take from me? What was in my head that scared you so much?
Before the Archbishop could answer, he vanished into the blackness as if nothing more than a light breeze had passed over him. In another moment, the darkness would end the enigma of Brooke number 2.
Come with us.
Brooke called to her through the rising wind.
We can save you.
Save her? We can't even save ourselves. And even on that day of extraordinary events, what I saw next threw everything I thought I knew into doubt. The cloud engulfed everything, people, cars, entire buildings, but when it overtook the second Brooke, she remained. Brooke wore disbelief on her face, while a curious smile slid across the face of her doppelganger. The gendarmes continued toward us.
Run.
Said Brooke. We took one final look back. Brooke number 2 watched us run while the world around her dissolved into nothingness. The dark, angled streets were no refuge. The echo of the gendarmes' footsteps on the cobblestones grew louder. I focused on Brooke running ahead of me. She never paused or hesitated. Fear transformed her into adrenaline. I followed, but I didn't know how much longer I could keep up. Brooke zigzagged us down one narrow street after another on our flight back to the hospital. We passed the boundary, marking the desolate wasteland I had visited that morning. The hospital towered ahead of us. 2 blocks more. The gendarmes got closer and closer with every step. My legs ached. Keep going. The black nothingness pursued the gendarmes. I had to keep running. A sharp left into the hospital. We tumbled down the stairs. The gendarmes raced right behind us. Brooke took the pendant from around her neck. Why was she so concerned with some stupid necklace? The platform doesn't exist anymore. I was here just a few hours ago, I said as she took it from around her neck. It glowed. Brooke inserted the pendant into the lock of 5B. It's a key. She turned the key as the officers aimed their weapons at us. We froze. They must understand the stakes. The fog erased the entire world from existence, but they still had to get their man. Why? I mean, where did they plan on taking us? We'd all seen what happened to the prison. And somewhere not far behind the gendarmes, the darkness closed in on us. Didn't they understand this? Did they not understand that the man who gave them their orders had already died? That their entire government hierarchy had ceased to exist? They no longer had a reason to function as they were, but now, thanks to their heroic stupidity, we would soon all die.
Can we come with you?
Said the first gendarme.
What?
You ran out of there like you knew a safe place to go.
Yes, yes, you can come with us.
Brooke said. Without so much as a whisper, the darkness dissolved through the walls of the old hospital. The gendarmes vanished into the black. I prepared myself, hoping my inevitable passing into the darkness would be painless.